Off.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. What's going on, guys? It's Caleb here, and I'm here with the one and only Conor Healey. Conor, how are you doing?
Doing well, brother. You're too kind, the one and only.
The one and only over there in Australia, a sales market that is not large enough. It seems like everybody knows everybody over there, but you're top of the top right now when it comes to sales. But yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, Conor and I have been good friends in this world of the high ticket space. Both have kind of been, I think it's been pretty much underground. We had very similar journeys from our come up to sort of inflection point. And now we're at the point where we both have our own private trainings to a different subset of individuals who are working in sales. And in today's video, we're going to talk about sort of our journey to date and where we got our start and foundation, and sort of how you guys can take advantage of some of the excellent stuff that we've been able to create when it comes to just the world of sales and just how you can make the most out of high ticket closing. Because there's a lot of garbage out there, and there's not a lot of people that I endorse, but Connor's certainly one of the people for sure that are on that list of definitely name to go check out. Definitely a figure that you want to, look at his content. There's got a lot to learn there just because it's good, practical, actionable training. But yeah, with that, I would say, yeah, Connor, how did you find your way into high ticket sales? I guess where did it all begin?
Oh, that is a long story, and I'll try and keep it as short as possible. But yeah, man, I pretty much tried every business model in the world possible
Mhm.
online. So affiliate marketing, drop shipping, like the whole nine yards. I got scammed a couple of times. I tried everything. And then one day when I was finishing high school, I was very desperate for a solution. And just as I'm sure yourself, we spoke about this another day,
Mm,
where you don't grow up in high school when you're becoming a salesperson. Like that just
right.
doesn't happen. Like, let's be real. But yeah, I ended up finding an ad from some random guy in Australia, and that was my first mentor. And eventually I ended up on a phone call with him just as we do as a career now. And he
Mm.
just basically sold me and just he closed me with the term, I think it was, are you gonna be the boy or are you gonna be the man? Um
That's a good
into
one.
into a $7,500 investment when I was 18. Uh wasn't good training at all. Like, not even
Really.
slightly. Yeah, like it was terrible. But I'm very grateful that it got me into the industry and it forced me to actually start getting some momentum into something,
Yeah.
because for years I just tried everything, flip-flopped in different business models. And that was when I actually seriously committed to one thing, one skill for years. That was when I actually started to see some true changes. And so, for the long story short, that's how I got my start. And then, you and I both know I've invested into a lot of mentors, past and present,
Yeah.
and I've probably spent 55K Australian dollars. I'm going to be transparent there. Australian dollars on sales training and education mentors over the past 4 or 5 years. And here I am now.
Yeah, and you mentioned something really interesting there, which I definitely think there's sort of a double-sided irony to just this world of high ticket sales, which is, yeah, I don't think anybody enters high school or leaves high school with the I want to work in sales, unless you've got sort of, maybe the uncle or the friend who decided to find it and was maybe pulling you into it. Sales, I find, is just kind of a career field that, as crazy as it is one that almost everybody has just kind of fallen into, come one way or another. Either college was something that we weren't really interested in, or some of the other stuff were just too boring or too entry level to really make the kind of money we were looking to make. And so stepping into sales, it's got that promise of really high earnings and really great commissions, obviously, and you can really work for yourself. And as some of you may have learned, that it's not all that it's cracked out to be, that's for sure.
No.
Um,
I mean,
certainly.
that's what we're taught in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Everybody comes in with that same dream, same vision, and yeah, I'd say it's certainly just as true for myself in that as well. Tried a bunch of the business models under the sun, and then sure enough, found my way to sales because it was like, well, all those other things. I guess sales brings money in to fund those other things. I originally thought I was going to take all the money I made and go right back into drop shipping or some other business model, but sure enough, I've been able to stay in it. But yeah, coming to that, sales not being as easy as I think a lot of people sell it or market it to us to be. You mentioned your first mentor wasn't the greatest. What was like your first offer or first sort of initial experience when it comes to an actual position or an account?
I think I worked with a digital marketing agency with a brand new training program that had never been sold. Yeah.
Oof.
So less than optimal. I thought that I knew how to sell and set and close, but I didn't because the person I work with was like not very good at all.
Yeah.
He basically done high ticket closing for like a year or something like that, and I think maybe 2 years if we're safe there. But I've been practicing all these sales skills for like, man, 6 to 8 months because that was what I was told. I was like, you need to get good, but like what I was
Mhm.
the skills I was learning was just like terrible, like really
Mhm.
really bad. So the
Mhm.
moment I got on an account, I just flopped it. Like had no idea what I was doing. So I did that, and then
And
when
did you
I flip
go
flopped,
and
yeah.
did you go straight into closing, or did you go like setter, closer, and work your way up the ranks?
So I was straight into closing in that position, and
Mhm.
then I landed my first like proper role because that lasted like 2 weeks because they're like,
Yeah.
oh man, this is obviously not going to work. Um, and then I landed a role through a referral to my main mentor, business, personal, sales, all that type of stuff. And I worked as a setter on his team. So funny, man. We came in with a team of setters. It was 5 or 6 of us, and I thought it was because I was persistent, consistent, and hardworking, which I was, but it was a book funnel for appointment setting, and nobody had set on the account before in the first place. There was 5 or 6 of us that started out. Everyone was gone in 2 weeks for a
Wow.
very for a very obvious reason because the account was terrible. But I was so naive and young, and I didn't have the right mentor to tell me right from wrong.
Mhm.
So I just ended up doing 3 months on that account, appointment setting,
Mhm.
making zero commission, like zero commissions. And then it got, I think the third month, I, it's hilarious thinking about back to it now. On the third month or around that range, there was one call that I set from my mentor or the guy I was working with before. It
Mhm.
closed. I got like $300 in commissions, $300 after like 8 months of start to the role.
Yeah.
And I remember I was so excited because that was my first internet money. I was like, I was
Right.
gassed about it. I think I was like maybe 19. Yeah, I was definitely 19. And I went down to the local bakery and I got this bagel and I called it the $1 million bagel. It's hilarious. It was hilarious thinking back then, but yeah, like I was so chuffed after like 0 to 8 months climbing this mountain, like falling down like 100 times.
Yeah.
And then I just got that first commission. I was like, this is just insane. Like internet money, it's real, like it's
Right.
possible.
Right. That is incredible. I've not heard that before. That is incredible. Yeah, I had a similar experience myself where you come out of these programs, and I think the biggest thing that they hype you up for is closing, 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 or high ticket closer, high ticket closer. Closing takes so much skill, as you can probably, I
Oh yeah.
mean, I would say, and you spend a lot of time in your program taking people from 0 to 1 who are brand new. And also too, you've been so generous as to impart them with a lot of the wisdom of offer finding and sort of what good looks like. So maybe they don't have to go through the same painful experiences. But no, I had a very similar where in the beginning it's like this huge ascension, right? It's like you come out of your program and it's like you're supposed to make all this money, and then it's just zero after zero after from month to month to month to month to month. Um, what do you feel like kept you going through that time period? Because a lot of people they'll have their first like 30 days, like this is a scam, I'm done. Charge
Yeah.
back, I'm out of it. So what actually kept you going?
I don't know, man. Like I think I was just so deep that I was like, I wanted to figure it out because it was 7.5K and that was a lot of money for me. That was like back when I
Oh,
first started.
especially
That
at
was
18, it's like that's got to
yeah.
be all the money you accumulate like in your life prior.
Yeah, like that was probably like 80% of my life savings. So I was like, do I have to figure this out? And I have to make it work because it was going to be equally embarrassing as well. It's like if I have spent all this time and I don't figure this out, it's
Mhm.
just like this is going to be so embarrassing. To my partner at the time, to my parents, like
Mhm.
it just I couldn't live with that. So I was like, I have to push through and make this work some way, shape, or form. And it was only until like a year and a bit that I was making maybe like 4 to 5K a month, man, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Like it was a struggle street up until that point. And even though I was a closer making, three, I'd say 3, 4 is probably more accurate.
Hmm.
I was like feeling on top of the world because I was a closer. But, a
Yeah.
lot of people forget that difference between even if like the setters that make three times as much as that and work probably way a lot less.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and well, there's also a lot of power to the offer part of that too, right? And the new offers and whatnot. I mean, that's just a dilemma that I see with. I mean, when you're a beginner, you don't know good from bad, and when you're also a beginner business owner, you don't know good from bad either, right? And so it's sort of the blind leading the blind sometimes, where you have underexperienced people working for an underexperienced owner, and it's 0 plus 0 is just 0, right? And
You know what's
maybe two
even worse than
people.
that? What's
Hmm.
even worse than that is guys, business owners who do that, where they go, we'll guarantee your placement, but we're also going to pay you with a new business that we just charged 10 grand to grow the business. And we're going to combine you two together
Yeah.
because that's going to work out well.
Right.
It
Right.
just never does.
Get two beginners in a room solving really complex problems and just see what happens. Yeah. And
Brilliant idea.
also, you mentioned something really interesting there, which is when you got your first commission check, the first sort of Wi-Fi money, so to speak. When that cleared for you, did you feel like it was a big, inflection point in your career? Because I know some people, it's like this big, like, kind of shock of relief, or given that it had been so many months in, I mean, what was sort of the significance of that for you? Do you feel like that was a breaking point, or do you feel like this is just like, oh, finally, and then on to the next one?
Yeah, it was massive, dude. Because I talked to like all my clients is like, it's your road on to like your first dollar online or to 10K a month. It's just a mountain of beliefs. Like that's just all that it is. It's so
Hmm.
hard for someone to conceptualize that you can dial a couple people on the phone and get paid just for setting appointments or closing deals. Like it is such a foreign concept to most people,
Yeah.
and it breaks your mind. So yeah, it was a massive moment for me because it was such a small payoff,
Hmm.
but like it was everything. Like it
Hmm.
mattered a lot. That's why I convey like a heavy importance to the guys I teach. It's like I don't care if it's $100. Like it matters every
Right.
single time. Such an
Right.
important milestone moment because then you believe that it's actually real and you can do it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And I think too, just the persistence it takes. I feel like people probably have it easier now than I feel like when we were in the space, just because there's more offers, there's more education, and
Yeah.
probably more education really is the biggest piece. Because I was a victim of the same thing. I think it probably took me like something to the same extent, like 6 months, 8 months to maybe even a year. I can't recall exactly like when the start was and when the end was, but it was just a lot of scraping around, like doing nothing, just consistent to the, well, I got to make this work. I got to make this work. I got to make this some way this is working because everybody around me seems to be making money in it. And I had friends in high ticket sales as well who were like
Yep.
doing commissions, or I'd heard the stories, right, of just like, oh, he closed like a 4K PIF and got a $400 sale, or got like 6K paid in full. And I remember thinking that that is like unfathomable amounts of money. Close
Yep.
$6,000, people spend that. Also, I think
Yep.
too, when you're young, it's tricky because you don't quite know how money is or how money works, right? So when you're talking about these 5K, 10K, 15K programs, or $50,000 services, you're used to thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars, where it's like, wow, people would really spend that much. But yeah, and so that was sort of the, floodgates are open. Now we're actually in the game. We've got Wi-Fi money. We're, a viable contester. Where did you go from there? And where was sort of like the accounts you worked on, some of the experience? And I even say, if you can in that too, how did we cross paths in that whole mix?
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. 'Cause I was about to talk about like where we kind of crossed paths and we were like
Yeah.
grinding together and doing role plays and stuff. Kind of, and because the high ticket sales space is so small, that's
Hmm.
why I say to everybody, it's like your reputation is so important because it's
Hmm.
like one bad relationship, one bad thing here and there. It's like it's not a smart choice in any way, shape, or form. That's why you got to leave businesses better than when you left them, or you don't burn bridges because everybody knows everybody and word will get around so quickly. So your reputation is
Hmm.
super important. But anyway, different topic. But yeah, from there I moved on to like full-time sales with my mentor. This is a different mentor from my first one, by the way.
Yeah.
It was the first company I worked with
Hmm.
and slowly progressed, but eventually I realized that I think he mentioned a time like, he was going to call me in to be CEO, but the company wasn't even making more than, 60, $70,000 a month.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking this doesn't make any sense. Although I really appreciate my mentor, I think I need to look at better options. And funny enough, one of the girls I used to work with in that company referred me to another guy whose
Hmm.
name was Zane, and that was a coaching program helping basically people create their own digital marketing agency.
Hmm.
And that was when basically like probably within like 2 months, 3 months maybe, that's when I got up to 10 to 12
Hmm.
consistently for a year straight, didn't deviate. So it was like 10 to
Woo!
12, I was working very hard out. Thank you. I was working very hard outside of sales. Like I was training a lot, as you would
Mhm.
know, you and I are obsessed with this, like literally
Yes,
obsessed.
very much
Um,
so.
yeah, very much. But like on the actual calls, I was probably working 3 to 4 hours a day, maybe five sometimes. I had 3 to 5 calls a day in the calendar. Had someone triaging for me. It was great. It was a good account, cut my teeth on, and at that point, I invested a further 20K into my training skills. Again, AUD by the way,
Hmm.
and that was probably like 15K US at the time.
Hmm.
And yeah, just got like way, 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 way better at skills component side of things. And then from there, well, in between that point there, it's a whole another story, but I ended up managing a 7 figure company that I took to multi 7 figures. I walked in, this was between the time I was working with my second mentor, the first business I was working with,
Yep.
and the when I started working with the digital marketing biz op.
Hmm.
I walked in as a 20-year-old at the time, managing a 7 figure company, never done sales management in my life.
Yep.
Uh, and then I took a team of 2 to 1. I fired a 35-year-old as a 20-year-old.
20-year-old that hadn't
Yeah,
managed
20-year-old.
before.
Yeah, yeah, 20-year-old, like first week. And then I ended up hiring 3 more people. And we took the business from like 125K cash to 350 in 4 months with the same leads original two
Wow.
sales guys had. So that was really cool. I was actually doing a lot of money from that. I was making from like 20 to 25K a month from that.
Hmm.
So that's before I'm just going to make sure I trace all the steps correctly.
Yeah.
Um, then he fired me because I was doing too good of a job, which this happens in the high ticket sales space. Like it actually does,
Yes,
more than you would think.
it very much does.
Yeah. So that happened for sure. And it was also because he found out I was 20. He thought I was like 28. That was
Hmm.
because I didn't have the beard then.
Yeah.
So yeah, he thought I was much older than I was. And then after that, skip a few steps. After selling that biz up for a year, I sold. I worked at Sales Sniper, which
Hmm.
you know I both worked at,
The
and
infamous.
then yeah, just Sales Sniper, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Worked with those guys for a bit. Loved working there the time that I did, and worked with some really cool people. Made some great connections, and then pretty much like the two final offers that I worked on. I had a bunch of offers in between with Sales Sniper,
Yep.
but yeah, with work for one 8 figure company helping doctors sell their medical expertise into a course. It
Hmm.
was 10K. And
Hmm.
then the other one was working for my mentor's brother, which was like 10K all the way up to 50K, like
Yeah.
agency services. And that was when I was just banging out packages, man. I was like paid in full, finances,
Yep.
2.5, 5K, 7.5K commissions.
Right.
And that was probably like the peak when I was making like 25K a month. Like
Yeah.
I was crushing it.
No, that's incredible. And there's a lot to unpack there. Definitely breeze through. But no, I think one big idea to take away from this that I think a lot of people don't understand properly about this world of high ticket sales is how many offers you will work for in your career because
Yeah.
offers implode, offers break, management or things will break down. And you talked about very briefly that I had a very similar experience where, from 1 month to the next, to the next, to the next, you might work for, I don't know, four or five, six businesses in the course of a year, or you might sell for two of them at a time. Gone are the days of you worked with one company and stay with them for a long period of time. We're sort of in this gig economy where we're contract, we're commission only, we're only eat what we kill. And so when the commissions dry up, it's kind of on to the next one. But
Mm.
yeah, I remember very distinctly meeting you in the closing code, which isn't a thing anymore. I think they changed the name of it
Uh-oh.
to
Here we
something
go.
else. Yeah,
Not good.
that's its own story. But I remember very
Yeah.
distinctly, and you mentioned something earlier, which is for those of you guys who are watching this who are new to the high ticket sales space, yeah, it's very small. There's very few people that are closers that stick around for a long time and are truly committed to the craft. And that's why I'd say you are someone undoubtedly that I've got just so much respect for and will easily vouch for because I remember being
Appreciate it.
back in those closing code group calls with you. And it was, You can tell, and in any coaching program too. And for those of you guys who are in Connors
Yeah.
or potentially considering joining his, we can talk about that after. There are people in coaching programs in the calls that are there because they're learning to get good, and there are people who are there because there's just entertainment value. And you are someone who very clearly had that. And maybe I'll put a screenshot of the screen of you of the photo of you from the coaching call. But you were someone who was very clearly there to get better, and you could just
Yeah.
tell by your professionalism and your preparedness with questions and everything. And I would like to say I definitely had a similar intent. But I just remember that was the one thing that really stood out. Is you can just see who's there because, they're killers. They're actually trying to drill their skills and rep their skills. Um,
Oh.
and the coaches love it too. You love when you have that student in there who's really hungry to learn and you can take the feedback. But yeah, that sounds
And I
like it's something to
reward
add to
that.
that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words, and it's the same reflected back to you, man. Like those days were sound terrible and old, but like those were the good old days. Like it was such a grind. Was so obsessed. Like would show up to 5 or 6 role play trainings a week, and when
Mhm.
nobody would show up with Jimmy Reese Hopkins, which shout out to Jimmy because Jimmy is a legend.
For
Um,
those of you who know who he is, right?
yeah, if you know Jimmy. Jimmy's savage.
Yeah.
Jimmy was so kind to me in that time. And yeah, like just constantly every single like for some reason, not many people showed up to that session with Jimmy at the end of the week. And like it was such a small group. I think it was because of UK time zone.
Yep.
I was that sado every 6 p.m. on a Friday. Instead
Hmm.
of me out being clubbing, I would be there with Jimmy
Yep.
and I'd be like, let's get a rep in, brother. Let's role play. I was
Yeah.
just so obsessed.
No, but and that's exactly it. And it's really nostalgic actually looking back on those times because that's like when you make your first commission check, it's great. Then when you start making your first money, that's even better. And then there comes a point where I think there's the realizing like, oh, I can actually like live off this. Like this is actually a full-fledged viable career. But that is so dependent upon your level of skill and level of commitment. And I think a lot of people fail to make that jump where it's like the level of skill required to actually be someone who can close at high rates and be attractive for most offers is so much higher than you think. Now, it's not that it's
Yeah.
unattainable, but you have to really want it. And you talk about that, the doing the 5, 6 days a week. I remember during my period, the same. Anyone and everybody who had a calendar link that I could put a time in. I even remember with you, there was one time I was like, hey brother, got any time this week? Can you send me a screenshot of your calendar that was booked out? And you were like, yeah, man, I'm pretty busy at this moment in time. Um,
Yeah.
but you get this momentum, and before you have true mastery in the skill, you have this like feeling of like you just don't want to let this slip because it took so long to get here. That it's just I don't know
Yeah.
if it's driven by the anxiety of like I don't want to atrophy, or just the desire of wanting to get better, a good mix of both. But I remember for me personally, it was a lot of fear driven stuff where I almost
Yeah.
had so much to prove to everybody and everyone that had seen me suffer for like 8 months, just not quite being as successful as friends were going off to college and having all these other experiences. But building
I
in
can
that
I
too, being
complete
really
I
young.
can
Hmm.
I completely agree with that. And even pairing with that, I'm sure you agree. It's like looking at all the other greats as well, like all the people that we looked up to as well that are really good in the space. I won't mention specific names, but there's a lot of people in the industry that I looked up to for a very long time and somewhat still do, depending on who you talk about. But
Depending on who you
uh,
talk about.
yeah, I mean, these guys were the greats that looked up to, people who making $100,000 a month in commissions, got like 80% close rates. I looked up to these guys as like that's possible. And I feel
Yep.
like I feel like that's the standard. And
Right.
I've never thought about it that way, but like I guess I've always wanted to be the best. I've always wanted to improve and become, really good at what I wanted to do. But
Hmm.
like, yeah, that was that fear, like you mentioned, of like investment, but also looking at those guys performing at such a high level and just wanting to be that. Like you just wanted to
Yeah.
be that person. You wanted to be those people, basically.
No, very much so. Very much so. And there's always kind of you, and you also, I think you aspire to kind of be that rep that people rumor about. I think one of the things you said, I don't know if it was in the recording or prior, but your reputation in this space, because it's small, is really important. It's exactly that. I think the desire is to become someone who is that like, oh, like we just said, Jimmy, you've heard of Jimmy? It's like, oh yeah, no, I've heard of Jimmy. He's a savage, right? Just to sort of have someone
Yeah.
maybe think about that with you or even myself in passing. And
Or be
then
known as an
come
offer breaker.
or an offer breaker, which is
Offer
a
breaker.
good thing and a bad thing, right? Great for the business, but bad because once you break the offer, then it's like, okay, we shut your calls off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I remember,
Yeah,
like I looked at like that as such a cool title, being like, I want to be an offer breaker. I want to go and
yeah,
break a business. Like that's
yeah,
that's how well I wanted to sell.
yeah,
That was how obsessed I was, and still am basically.
yeah. And then building past that too, you talk about being young in this space. How old are you now?
23.
23. So you're actually older than me. I'm 21 in this space. Um, but yeah, you bring up a really good point, which is really subtle for those of you guys who are sort of the young internet money crowd, depending on whoever's viewing this, is age has always been kind of a quiet, like a subtle under the radar problem that I've run into with offer owners and business owners. And
Mm.
that's why a lot of people, I'm more comfortable with it now because I'm just, I'm doing my own thing with my own programs. Prior, I would never talk about my age, or whenever I was doing job
Never.
applications or whatnot, I'd always kind of like sweep it under the rug, or I'd just never be a topic of discussion. That's even why I grew this out. Actually, I don't know if it was the same for you, but it was to actually make me look older because
No,
so
I just
many.
got bullied. I just got bullied into growing it, and I was like, oh, this actually suits, so I'm gonna keep it.
Yeah, and well, I got the screenshot of you doing the role play without it, and I would say it's a little bit
An
sharper with it.
improvement. An improvement. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I always get the pre-bid Connor phase is the reference people talk about it. It's very funny.
Um, but yeah, but that unspoken envy, I think that people run into of just having your youth and having that commitment, dedication. People don't. It's something that from young to young we admire, and I love seeing young people come into this space because I just can relate with that so much. But when you're working for somebody who might be 30 or 40 sometimes, or even older, they have a lot of envy baked into that where they're like, you're how old doing what? And then also that dilemma too of paying. That's another twisted reality of this space is you will do really good in commissions and be really damn good at your job. And the business owner, for some reason, can't fathom the fact that they are paying you that much. There's some instances where genuinely you as a rep will make more than the owner of the business just because you are pretty much only taking profit. Like you have no fixed expenses besides your own living or your own capex, and you don't have ad costs, you don't have responsibility for clients, you don't have anything. And so if you're doing really good, you might net more than the business owner does. And I don't know why, but their go-to is like they don't realize that you're doing good because the incentive is so great for you to do good. And they've done so many things right. But no, the reaction is, well, I want to make more. So why are you making that much? You can live off of that. But it's like I'm here to get really good. And also when you hear those stories and rumors of the reps doing high numbers, but that's where I've learned there's a lot of nuance too, I think, in how you position yourself for offers as well. I think once you get better interviewing and just kind of conveying the level of like self-respect and self-worth needed, they have an easier time with that. Because before, when I was new, I had such a hard time. It's that fine line of like, yes, I want to be a good talent for your business, but I also need you to give me the space because I am a professional. Like it's commission only. But now I've gotten more comfortable with the fact that offers aren't really scarce for me and selling is
Hmm.
something that I know that I'm conclusively good at. So I have a way easier time now negotiating compensation structures and just kind of putting the cards on the table and just like, cool, these are my terms that we're doing business on, no more, no less. I don't know if you have anything to shed on that.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes with experience, man. Like I like to tell all my guys as well, like when you can accumulate this box that you're in of experience and case studies and achievements, you carry yourself differently, but it's also how you frame yourself. It's like when I can just go on and talk to business owners, especially for a management role. Yeah, look, I was 20 years old and I mean, I don't even have to reference the age, but let's say I came into a company that was seven figures, turned to multi seven figures. What the statistics I mentioned before with when I worked with Ripe House Advisory, uh, when you can rattle that off and you can say, I've invested this in sales training, I've done this, when you're so core confident that you're better than every other single candidate you're coming up against, you're literally bulletproof. And it,
Yeah.
it just happens with time. But the problem is because people don't see the results they want in such a short amount of time in this industry, they give up, they don't do it long enough. But where the true returns come from high ticket sales is a year, 2 years. Like that's
Hmm.
that's where you're really going to start to see some really great momentum. Like
Yeah.
I got one of my guys, Ben, who first started working together as a refrigeration mechanic, at best earning $700 a week. Now he's moved out of home. He's making 10K a month, and he's only like 10 months in,
Wow.
and he's doing it consistently. But he has that mindset that, for example, you and I have of just obsession.
Yeah.
Like he wants to get better. He's constantly learning. He's constantly showing up. He's constantly wanting to do more and be more.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people get wrong in this industry. And that's, I don't like using the word guru or throwing shade at the word guru because technically you could count you or me as a guru.
Right.
But I say marketers versus sales guys is the difference, right?
Yes.
Marketers versus salespeople because marketers just glorify. I'm not going to say any names. But there's a lot of people out there, $300 to $500 a day, texting simple messages on your phone. It's like, what
Ha.
kind of BS is that?
Yeah.
Or it's just like setting or closing. Oh yeah, like you become a high ticket closer in 90 days. It's like, what? Because when I first got in the industry, probably similar to you, that was what I was told. 90
Hmm.
days, you're gonna be making 10K a month, you're gonna be sitting up by the beach and you're gonna be crushing it. But
Or the biggest
very,
thing is
very rude
that
awakening. Mm.
you just show up to the calls, they want to buy, answer a couple questions, and the sale is done.
Man, if only, what a steal that would be.
But no.
Just
And but so yeah, but no, that's exact and I think too, that's why people are so jaded about the world of high ticket sales. That's why I think people are jaded about all these things, is marketers will market. And I think they're used to, and I think we're coming into a big correction right now with the info space of just needing to become claimless. You can see it in Facebook's ad policies and just even general advertising policies. You can't do the income claims like you used to. You can't do a lot of the claims like you used to. You have to be much more indirect or much more genuine about sort of the art of skill and art of craft. And if there's one theme that you've mentioned several times, just the fact that you've invested in yourself, right? And that's not for, a new model or new opportunity, but it's just for the skill. Um, yeah, it's not for a new opportunity model, but it's just for the actual skill itself and developing yourself. And I think that's where we'll sort of come into some of your stuff now. But that's one of the things that I have probably the highest respect for. And I think that is what all people need to put their focus on when it comes to this world of high ticket is actually getting good at the skill. I know so many reps who have done the beginner programs, get on a really well marketed offer and start making money. And then the offer breaks, the offer closes, and then they go into someplace else and they can't carry themselves. From there, it just breaks down because they don't actually have skill. They didn't actually have sales ability. But I think, bring this home to, I think the work you're doing now, and part of the reason why you're on is you, I would say, have probably the best beginner sales coaching program there is out there for people who are new to the space, who are wanting to transition into the world of high ticket sales. And so, yeah,
mm.
I'd actually be curious too to learn about sort of how that came to be, because I think when it comes to, it's so funny when you're a rep and you're selling for other people's programs to then pivot around to have your own, and not like you said in that self-serving guru sense, but I'd say you're a real craftsman. You've done your work, you've done your hours, but yeah, how did Remote Sales Academy come to be, and how were you able to sort of make that transition to, or sort of what would you say is the beginnings of that?
It's a great question, man. Very good question. Yeah, like it's coming to close a year now. Like we've been doing this for 11 months now. I think we started around April last year in 2023. And yeah, man, I was just like, I started an agency, which was the worst mistake I could have done. I started like a short form content marketing agency. Like
Hmm.
that was what I had done in the beginning. Or I transitioned to, I decided to do that back in October of 2022. Bad move. Not smart. Shouldn't have done that. Should have just continued selling.
What sparked you to get
Uh,
into that? I was gonna say, because that was,
desperation.
I think that's a dream that some reps have, is once they finish actually doing high ticket closing, that hey, okay, I'll use my closing to get back into sales or get
Yeah,
back
I think
into
it's
agency. Hmm.
I think it's desperation because I was like, cool. I was on an eight-figure offer, didn't work as well as I'd hoped, and I'm like, I'm just so sick of this. I just like, I didn't really fully conceptualize or understand the differences or like what to look for in a good offer. I had no idea. Like,
Hmm.
I didn't have a process. I didn't have a strategy at all. Same thing with networking. Like, I didn't really formulate anything in particular, like very good. Uh, so once I done ran the content agency for like 4 or 5 months, hated it, disbanded it. Uh, long story short, agency, in my opinion, not the best business model to start.
You
Uh,
did succeed at it. You did succeed at it.
I
Was an
I
informed
did,
decision.
but I hated it so much. I was working so much. I was stressed out of my mind, and I was like, this sucks. Uh, and it just wasn't me. Personal preference. I just think that I've got many friends that are successful with agencies, but they started it 6 years ago. Key
Mm,
thing there. Seven,
mm,
8 years ago, when it was a
very
lot
much so.
easier,
Yeah.
testimonials, different type. That's a whole other thing. But essentially, I saw a bunch of people in our space of people who are just basically high ticket closing people who, teach how to learn this skill. And I looked around and I was like, man, all of this just sucks so bad. Like it's not good at all, which I'm sure you probably are very aware of that because it takes a lot with someone like your reputation as well to go, I actually recommend Connor. Hopefully people seriously know that.
Yeah.
Like this space is very small. Like to put that recommendation out is a serious thing. Uh and yeah, like I was just like, man, these guys are crushing it and they're burning so many people, charging them five, six to $10,000. Yet the value they're providing is nothing. Like the sales training is really basic. It's exactly like my old mentors. The
Hmm.
support is nothing. And they're so focused on building a company as big as possible. So they sell so many people 100, 200, $300,000 a month, and then they don't give the student the supports that they actually need. And I saw like a massive problem in the market where like no one was fulfilling the need for people of someone who's actually been there and done that. Because everyone else I looked at, a couple months, 6 months, a year if you're lucky that they've actually been in high ticket sales. I'm like, well, I've been doing this for 4 years. And I felt for like a very long time like I wasn't confident enough to teach anything close to this
Hmm.
because a lot of people I learn from, sales trainers, love them as I do, they're gonna say, why would you do sales training? You're so young, you don't have enough experience, you're not competent
Hmm.
enough. And that was a psyop that I believed for a very long time. But I very much realized, especially as I coach my guys today, I forgot how much I had progressed from like day dot because the years had progressed so fast. So
Right.
that was where I kind of birthed the RSA community. And since then, it's been fantastic because like we've just grown. We've tried to do ads. That's one thing I'm still trying to figure out as a business owner. And I found
Yeah.
out, but spent a lot of money on that, still haven't cracked it. But like we've grown to the time of this recording, 11th of March, 2024. So about, 11 months, to about 160 members from
Woo!
just a YouTube channel and word of mouth. So it's been great. Uh, fantastic feedback. And yeah, it's been another level of purpose because I talk about this with, I guess, a lot of my guys is that once you get to a certain level of income, it doesn't really matter anymore. It just becomes numbers. Like
Hmm.
what gets me really excited is to speak to the younger version of myself who's 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, trying to figure this stuff out. And instead of taking 4 years like it did for me, maybe it takes them a year and a half,
Hmm.
maybe 2 years to get to that 20, 25K a month range. Like
Yeah.
that's what really excites me.
Yeah, and you mentioned, well, one thing too, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Seeing a lot of yourself or myself, just in your students, right? That young and hungry sort of optimistic, bright-eyed kid who just shows up to the call and is like, high ticket sales, I've just learned about it. I want to be a closer. I want to do my first 5K, I want my first commission check. Oh man, I love it, right? And there's a lot of people too. And this comes full circle, but there's so many people who will, like you said, it takes a while to actually hit a point of proficiency. And I would say, I don't know if you've run into it for certainly people I've taught. I've certainly been envious of some of my students and just how quickly they've progressed because what they were doing in months, I felt like took me years at times. But I'm also kind of that grateful for the value exchange to be able to have given them that opportunity to not have to need to suffer as much as I feel like I had to or need to during my career.
For
But yeah,
sure.
no, and truly with that recommendation, you are bang on. Most of these coaches and people out there, and it's the blind leading the blind. And if you've all you guys who are watching
Mm.
this who's beginners, if you haven't been in the market or in this space for 4 or 5 years, you don't know who's a name that's been around for 4 or 5 years. So many of these offers and new opportunity guys, they kind of they come and go. And it's like I
Yep.
dare you to try to, ask them for a sales call, ask them for their work. And you see too is like,
They never put it up. They
Yep.
never put that up. They never like sales calls as well, like is one of the biggest definitive things you can tell with this.
Yep.
And like I don't think I don't think all of the industry is bad. I think 99% of it is. There
Yep.
is there is some people out there other than me that I think are fantastic and great. I think they do great stuff. But for the vast majority, from like what majority of people are looking at, it is really bad. And the problem is too, is that I've seen this happen and because I've spent a lot of money on training programs and coaching and mentorship over the years, and I've seen it happen. People psyop themselves to believing that what they've purchased is good. And I have people from competitors' training programs who are meant to be fantastic saying that my YouTube channel is amazing. And if my YouTube channel is great, my free content versus their $5,000 training is good, that's some cause for concern. Or even
Yep.
worse, I've heard some terrible things where I think I've mentioned this to you before, but they have contracts where it's literally written in the fine print that you can't write a negative review, or that we guarantee you that you're going to make 10K a month the next 90 days if you do this absurd amount of outreach talking to these people that won't work, by the way,
Right.
and you can't track and show them. And but if you consume more than what I think it was like 15% of the training or 20% of the training, that guarantee becomes void. So there really is so many different traps and things that are set up for beginners in this industry that I fell prey to like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Hmm.
And yeah, like as much as possible that I can help people get the right guidance, whether it's through me or somebody else, I don't mind. But it's like
Yep.
as long as you get the right help is really what I care about because it's just speaking, like you said before, to
Yep.
that young man who was like, I want to make money online, I want to figure it out, but just getting the right coach and the right mentor the first time, not the
Yes.
fifth or the second.
And it makes all the difference. When you're a beginner and you don't have any skill, yeah, you might, as bad as every other program is, you might get some value out of it just because it's teaching you, how to walk or, how to tie your shoes. But when it comes to push comes to shove to actual practicality of are you a qualified candidate? But more importantly, can you be self-assured in the fact of knowing that you have learned a skill? Absolutely not. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about your work is people leave that with an actual clearly defined crystallized skill to a good standard of sales. And not only that, but they have all that they need to become like an actual independent walking, free flowing individual. And I say too, you have probably the best training as far as when it comes to finding offers and stuff like that, and how to actually develop a network, which I would admit too is something that I've struggled with. Offers, there's good opportunities and good offers, but it's like they kind of just come serendipitously. But you've really kind of crafted the art and the science of how can you actually, think almost like an agency owner and develop your own pipeline of these offers and develop the relationship, the rapport without pissing a bunch of people off from saying no in interviews. And then more importantly, once you get past that, all the skills to go with it, right? And all that goes into the full gambit of sales and really mastering the art of taking people from 0 to 1. And what I'd say too, for anybody watching this who has maybe invested in a sales training program, go charge back, go get your funds back, and definitely come full circle to Remote Sales Academy. And I don't say that lightly too. I really do genuinely mean that because if there's one thing that wasted most of my time in my career, it's getting the wrong advice from the wrong people and thinking it's legit and having to pay not only with my money, but my time to learn what the real
Time.
thing was. And
Yep.
those where it's like you're paying with money to protect your time, but to have to pay with both, it's a zero. It's lose lose. Sometimes I'd rather probably just have sat in isolation and figured it out because that's what I had to do anyhow, right? And so Connor, I'd say you're definitely once more like a name that I really strongly vouch for. But yeah, but with that, I'd say it's been an absolutely incredible journey. I mean, I really had a lot of fun hearing about the come up from the kid in high school who spent 7.5K on a mentor all the way into um your first couple offers, getting smacked in the face, not being able to close, and then finally taking that detour as a setter, working your way into closer manager. And I'd say that's some of the stuff that I focus and teach for those of you guys who are watching this who are interested. My programs, I'd say, are a bit more. I'm working with people who have experience skin in the game, aren't necessarily trying to go from that 0 to 1. I do more advanced training for closers and sort of my methodology of identity closing, a one size fits all that fits all offers in all industries, but really mastering the art of overcoming fear and being able to really crystallize hard to articulate things in your counterpart's mind. But more importantly, how to use that to become an effective communicator to be able to transition yourself out of sales professionally to be a manager, if you want to be a professional consultant, so on and so forth. But you cannot do any of those things without having a good understanding of skills. And when you're a beginner, something like this, it's like working with Cristiano Ronaldo. But I would say, trying to train with someone who works with professional football athletes. Connor's the guy to
Mm.
get you into Major League Soccer, to get you signed, and to have you playing on your dream club team and being able to make your first dollars as a pro. And then from there you can stack that up and do many things. But I would say with that, yeah, Connor, what's over the horizon? What do you sort of see for yourself? And I'm sure you're just going to go under the radar, rug pull everybody and disappear, right? Take your money and run to the
Of
hills. But
course. Yeah, typical scammer. Yeah, no, I think I'm in a really great position, man. Like we have a lot of demand and for like our training program and we're exactly where we need to be. And I'm not just saying that, like we genuinely are. Like we have in the future, like we're not going to scale up past 20 students a month, and 5 students a week. Like
Mhm.
this is just it's in my mind, look, it very much may change, but like for the very strong for me right now, it's like if I can help 5 people a week and have a small team and keep a business super profitable and make a bunch of impact and purpose, then that's sick. That's great. That's all that I want to
Yep.
do for now. Priorities change as you get older, but for me, if I can chill and I can enjoy teaching what I love, which I do, then that's fantastic. So like I don't have any crazy plans outside of this for the next 1 or 2 years. We'll see how it goes, but so far things are being amazing. I love helping the people that I help, and there's really nothing much more I would rather be doing at this point in time. So
Yeah.
nothing is really going to change. Just going to keep getting better at this because like a lot of people have told me, oh, why don't you get people to 10, help them get to 20 and 30? I'm like, yeah, maybe at some point. But like for me, it's just, I'm focused on the transformation of 0 to 10 because I'm so fascinated with it.
Mhm.
Because it's the transformation I went through and it was very difficult, very difficult. There's so many, it's everything around the box. It's networking, it's interviewing skills, it's screening skills, it's actual sales skills, it's understanding sales at the fundamental core. Like there's an obsession that has just brought such a unconscious conscious mastery for me for sure. Like where I just don't even know what I'm doing at points
Mhm.
in time. And it's down to the point where I had a student that I brought on just last week where he said, oh, by the way, like on our onboarding call, oh yeah, by the way, I noticed all this stuff that you said on our sales call. I'm like, really? Because I didn't think that I was selling, but
Right.
it's just so burned into my brain now that it's so unconscious, and that's why I had such a, I guess, imposter syndrome with teaching this stuff because I just thought everybody knew what I knew. Because when you get to that point, it's just like I'm not saying I'm the best sales trainer on the planet. I'm not the best salesperson either. Better than average, I would say. But it's like I'm sure you can resonate too. It's so hard to think back to what you were like at the beginning to now, and it's just so unconscious.
Oh, very much so. And I would argue it's like, no, definitely I'd say up there as far as, top 1%. You say that very humbly. Um, but yeah, you touched upon something interesting there. Yeah, thinking back to, it's hard to remember the days of like learning what a lead was. Or I even remember people
Yeah.
saying triage call, triage call, triage call. I'm like, well, what's a triage call? Or
What's a
like
piff?
yeah, piff, piff,
What's a
piff the
piff?
magic. Yeah. And or like what's a close or yeah, piff or like objection handling or fear concern or certain reframes. It's almost like you're learning a second language. And yeah, and you're spot on. That first 0 to 10, I'd say it's all mental. It's a lot of it. Half of it's a mental game, half of it's a skill game. And I think the first part of that is that commitment to it. So for those of you guys who are committed and I say this once more, if do whatever you can. If you're in high ticket sales and you're serious about it and you want to save your time, figure out how to find your way into Remote Sales Academy. And Connor, your stuff will be linked down below for wherever you guys are watching this. But where can people hear about you? Where can people find you?
For sure. So pretty straightforward. YouTube channel is just my name, so Conor and then Healey, so for Conor Healey. And then we built the business of like a Calendly link, a Zoom link, and a Stripe link. So like it's just a YouTube channel. It's just a YouTube channel, Instagram basically. So
Yeah,
Instagram is just first name, last name underscore. You'll find me there and we can chat there. But that's pretty much it. The two platforms I'm on. Pretty
sweet.
straightforward.
Love it. And any sort of closing notes or, final advice you'd give? Imagine a younger Connor, when they're just starting in the sales career, maybe even, looking at what, like, yeah, just getting started. Is there a quote or sort of piece of advice you give him? And then we'll close it off on that.
I'd say, man, just believe it's possible because I remember what it was like seeing an ad for, Iman Gadzhi, for some of you guys probably know who that is, when I was 16 on how to start your own marketing agency. And I knew that I wanted to make money online and I didn't know how. Everything works. Everything does a great job of making money online. Everything has its drawbacks and its benefits, but just know that it's possible. And just the reason I love high ticket sales is because it's such a skill you can rely on forever, whenever. Doesn't matter what economy you're in. Caleb and I will never have to worry about money ever again because drop us in any country in the world. Doesn't even have to be English speaking. As long as you can get a laptop, you're just pretty much sorted. Like you
Yeah.
can, or even just a phone, right?
Right.
Set up those sales calls on
Just a
on
just a
Zoom on
couple texts,
phone.
just a couple texts a day, and the money comes
Yeah,
rolling in,
just just
Yeah.
a couple texts, $500 a day. You know the gist. Traveling the world, but yeah, I think it's just that it's possible because it's I know what it feels like to see so many people online talking about all this just facade, and there's a certain audience of people out there that are my typical dream clients who can see through all of that and know that that's not true, that it's not easy and it doesn't happen overnight. And it's possible, but it's behind a lot of hard work and discipline. So I probably would just say to someone out there, it's just believe that it's real because it is. And when you make your first dollars online and you get to your first 5 and 10K a month, that's when your life can completely change and it's incredibly worth it.
Sweet. No, love it. All of that is true, 100%. All right. Well, there you have it. Conor Healey. Check out his stuff. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Bye.